So, OWI has announced microtransactions, and it seems that everyone has just gone completely feral.
Here, use this!
Right, can we just calm down for a second? I have deliberately waited a few days before making this video as I wanted to take on what's going on as best as I can, so I can process how I feel about it much better and get a good grasp of what's going on, thus meaning I can translate that much clearer to you guys in this video. Before we get started though, I do want to clear up a few things before we go for any further forwards. Yes, I am partnered with Squad, and I have been able to speak with a few of the team over these past few days. No, they didn't ask me to make this video, nor has anyone else within OWI or attached. I also want to say that just because my opinions may differ from other people's doesn't mean that I am a sellout or just licking boots for the sake of attention. I'm not about that. Everything I'll be stating in this video will either be fact or my personal opinion. There's a lot of misinformation and things have been taken way out of context as people try to read between the lines of some of the vague things that OWI have said, as well as other creators and influencers, which is why I want to try and clean that up as well. Now, I'm probably one of the older content creators who's involved in Squad. I won't say my age, but put it this way, I'm closer to 40 than 30, and that's a bit depressing. But essentially, I'm too long in the tooth for bullshit. I'm not one to suck up to people for the sake of clout or attention. This is all very much still a hobby for me, and my journey on YouTube is still in its infancy and is still all about helping other people on Squad with the knowledge that myself and my community can share with newer and existing players, which in turn helps everyone have a better time. Now, whilst I may be a lot smaller than some of the guys out there, that doesn't make my opinion or what I will be talking about any less relevant. But I do ask that you try and watch this video as open-minded as you can. Now, at first, I was against the idea of making this video, but I have been asked numerous times by a lot of people within my communities, both in Discord and YouTube, if I was going to make a video on the current Squad hot topic, being that they know that I'm quite level-headed about things in general. So, I'll very quickly start with a little about myself for those who don't know me or don't know me very well. As you will know, my name is Honcho, because it says right there next to the subscribe button. I've been playing Squad since around 2017, and I've been streaming it from around 2018. Starting in early 2022, on top of streaming Squad most days, I've also been making guides, gameplays and update videos on YouTube. And that's what has led me to where I am now, including being invited to the Squad Partner Program in the summer of 2022. Now, despite having over 35,000 followers collectively over a few various platforms, this isn't my main line of work. It's a hobby. It's a passion for me. I'm a painter and panel beater by trade, which funny enough is something else I am passionate about, but that's by the by. What I do here is for fun, to help others, and it allows me to be creative. So, let's start getting into this. As we all know, OWI have announced in the forthcoming update, we will now have some optional DLC in the shape of emotes that will be purchasable for a small fee, otherwise known as microtransactions. Alongside this, there will be some optimizations, bug fixes, and Squad going to a newer version of Unreal Engine. I'm glad they made a point to mention this properly rather than burying it deep within a post like what a lot of other developers do with stuff like this. Now, the main thing I have seen people saying about this is that this is just the start of a downhill trend, and you give them an inch, they will run a mile. There have also been quite a few videos have come out on this topic, and one of the commonly mentioned things is a crude comparable to Fortnite, which couldn't be any further from Squad if you tried, and is a game that is essentially aimed at a much younger audience. So immediately, with having that comparison, people just seem to assume the worst, saying, okay, it's emotes now, but before we know it, we'll see pink tanks and people in banana suits flossing or clown skins. I'm not going to lie, that is also a concern of mine, but one of the joys of being a Squad partner is we have a little Discord section where we can communicate with the devs and the community management, and literally the first thing I saw was one of the teams saying the things that are coming to Squad are based on a military environment, and then dismissed a few other wild ideas by saying, whilst that's funny, it doesn't fit within the theme of Squad. Now, I may be taking this at face value, but from what I have seen and been reading these past few days, we won't be seeing Hello Kitty AKs or anime tanks. Although, I still hope they hide the Super Bonker 9000 as an Easter egg somewhere in game on one of the maps, just for a laugh. They have mentioned that there will be others further down the line though, but haven't stated exactly what at this moment in time. So right now, I think we can afford to put the pitchforks down for a moment and see how things pan out. At the end of the day, if it really is a woeful addition to the game, it could very well be cut short or even removed entirely, like the voice commands of 2019. OWI is doing everything they can to avoid major content being locked behind a paywall, but they can't 100% say this will never happen, as nobody knows what the future holds. If for some reason they would have to backpedal and change their stance on this in say 3 years' time, people will just go ape again and use what OWI said against them, a bit like what's happening now with the 2015 comments. Yes, the devs have been a bit vague in what they're saying about future monetization, but they don't have a crystal ball predicting the future. If they did, trade and stock would be far more profitable and they wouldn't need the emotes. Realistically, Squad could have been charging us for all of the content they've released over the years, right back to the first Canadian expansion. It's what most companies would have done and would have been extremely lucrative, but it would have created a natural divide and effectively ruined the flow of games, especially when you play for 4 or 5 games in a row on your favourite server, only to be booted out because you don't have a certain map or faction. So in the grand scheme of things, having a smaller optional DLC, such as emotes, isn't really that bad of a shout. Yes, when the project first started in 2015, they didn't plan for any paid content, and to go this far before introducing it has been a really good effort. But believe it or not, this is not just a new thing suddenly whizzed up. It's been on the cards since Squad was released. You know, a lot can change in 8 years. Technically, I've worked for 3 different companies in the last 8 years, one of which was nearly a business I was about to go into with the aim to fully take over in a certain amount of years. But things changed, I got burnt out, and ended up finding the job where I'm at now, and I'm in a much better place both physically and mentally. So all those concerned about the original devs who left or move on after the span of 8 years, I don't really think that's too big of a concern. Back in 2020, Will Stahl stepped down as the CEO of OWI, but has remained involved with OWI as an advisor, board member and shareholder. He also helped oversee through the transitional period and selection process for a new CEO, which led to Vlad Siraldi. But for some reason, this has also become something that people are concerned with. Vlad Siraldi's past experience spans over 20 years in the gaming industry, including 7 years with mobile games and microtransactions. But you don't have to look far to see that he wanted to get back into bigger projects and, to quote, "On my bucket list is to be part of a top 10 franchise that generates massive revenue and becomes a classic for the ages with a critical and fan acclaim. Whilst the past 10 years has been specialised in mobile gaming, I have experience making hit titles on consoles and PC." So just because Vlad has been involved in mobile games in the past doesn't mean he's going to turn Squad into the next Raid Shadow Legends. Which brings us on to the sponsor of this. Nah, I'm only joking, I'm not that big yet. Eggman, who is a former Project Reality leader, has made a fantastic post on Reddit, and I encourage all of you to go and read it, no matter how much you hate Reddit. It's genuinely a good post. But he goes on to talk about his relationship with Vlad and the rest of the team, the economics of Squad, and what he felt could have been done differently. I've put a link to the post in the description down below, but it's a real eye-opener and gives you a really good insight as to what's going on. Oh, and I very quickly want to mention another thing that people seem to be dragging up as a problem. I've seen a few people dragging up the fact that Tencent has a minor stake within OWI, and that seems to upset a lot of people or given them cause for concern. What they have failed to mention though is that Tencent has much bigger stakes in other publishers and games that you already probably play. They even have a 40% stake in Epic Games, and a stake in Discord. So personally, I feel that Tencent's involvement is pretty irrelevant, but if it did do anything, it probably aided the game doing better on the Chinese market. Personally, I do feel that OWI could have done much more to at least announce this in a better fashion. For starters, Squad has a bunch of partnered creators on various platforms and varying in size. Perhaps if they'd mentioned it to us first, the whole initial shock and awe and the potential fallout would have been contained to a much smaller group of people. But like what's been happening over the past few days, we've been discussing it, clearing things up, making suggestions, and every time we've all spoke about this, more and more is being clarified. From there, all of us would have been in a much better situation to help inform all of you guys exactly what's going on and what we're getting and what the future holds. After all, if you have your creators on side, things become much easier. Whereas if they're in the same state of shock as everybody else, they're going to make the reactional videos that you've already seen. Now, another idea would have been to let the community on a whole decide, but when you consider that Reddit, forums or Steam is only representative of a small percentage of the player base, it's not really a realistic answer. And let's face it, it's 2023. No matter what was put forward, somebody was always going to be upset. You just have to look at the Tarkov community as an example of being on fire every time a change or something new is implemented or suggested. I have seen a few people express concern of pay-to-win content, and I think we can all agree that will never happen, as it has no place within Squad whatsoever. But to help calm this one down, OWI are concerned and focused on not releasing anything that could be considered pay to win. This is also part of the reason why some of the emotes are restricted to staging and main areas only, which makes sense, as a few put you in a third person perspective, so it could be used to cheese seeing around corners like what you would do in PUBG and Arma. Now, they did mention there will be other microtransactions in the future. Realistically, we're probably looking at some form of weapon skins, maybe some uniform tweaks or patches, and possibly some more emotes. There's plenty of realistic hand signals that could make good additions in all fairness. Personally, I would like to see one thing that I would happily pay for, and that is some very, very basic weapon modification. I'm not talking about stuff that would change your kit entirely and make it unrecognizable and overpowered, but maybe an alternative optic or grip. For example, I don't get on with the US Army aimpoint sight that you would see on the traditional combat engineer kit. So maybe giving me the ability to place an EOTech on instead for a couple of dollars, I'd be totally down with that. I'd rather have the option to pay for smaller things that has no effect over the game on a whole than to pay for factions and maps that will essentially become a paywall between community members. Not only that, but if keeping the core content of future DLCs free, they are essentially sticking to their promise that they made back in 2015, because at the end of the day, you don't need to buy the emotes or skins to play the game, do you? I will be one of the first to kick up a big stink, however, if we do start to see ridiculous Hello Kitty skins, but I have faith that it won't happen. However, there is a very big white elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, and done so sooner rather than later. And that is the Kickstarter rewards. There hasn't been an update on these for a very, very long time, and with the recent news of microtransactions, these people have every right to be upset that once again, their awards have gone unaddressed, whilst the company is essentially seeking extra funding. Now, I'm seeing this more and more throughout the gaming industry these days, and it's very disappointing. However, once again, if Squad were to communicate better and keep people updated on this situation, it would certainly help keep people informed and not feel forgotten about. Now, OWI do have plenty of content planned for this year, but they're not announcing anything yet, due to being burnt in the past. And whilst the OG roadmap, which was very optimistic, certainly didn't help them at the time, I feel a very basic roadmap could be presented, but with no dates and no major giveaways. Just something that essentially says, hey, this is what we're working towards. Nothing is set in stone, things are subject to change. Yes, there's things on the old roadmaps that still aren't completed, or they could be dropped altogether, but we simply don't know this right now. I did touch on this subject in my Future of Squad video at the start of the year. Look, at the end of the day, yes, microtransactions can be a slippery slope, but so long as it stays to optional feature content and not actual key gameplay elements, Squad will be alright. The devs have stated there will not be any loot box, and I sure as hell hope we will never see any form of battle pass. But again, these things simply just do not fit within the model and design of Squad. If they want to use some Squad assets to go make a mobile-based game to generate extra revenue, then I hope they go for it. But for now, the best thing that we can do is take things step by step. Not be afraid to voice our opinion, no matter how you look at it, just so long as you respect and accept the fact that others may differ from yours. Spouting stuff like consumer cope isn't going to get you anywhere. I already know I'm going to get a bunch of trolls in the comments, which is part of the reason why I was hesitant making this video in the first place. And if you've made it this far through the video, thank you for hearing me out on what I've had to say on the whole situation. Look, the bottom line is yes, OWI has had a shaky couple of years, but 2022 was an extremely strong one. Community trust may be a bit shaken right now, and it may seem that the devs are out of touch, but that generally seems to be a thing in the gaming industry on the whole these days. OWI have said they are looking into other ways to utilize the Squad partner program going forwards, and hopefully that may help bridge the gap between the devs and the community. But I do have to sympathize with them, when no matter what they do, every update, fix or patch, the same loud minority constantly berates them with hateful comments, and that helps absolutely no one. The devs are still very passionate about Squad, and they are working tirelessly and constantly to keep pushing the game forwards. Their player base is steadily growing and is 3 times the size of what it was on average compared to this time last year. They are also well aware that going down the wrong path with microtransactions will be extremely damaging to their game and their livelihoods. I have no reason to doubt their business model right now. It's not like they're weeks away from bankruptcy and about to vanish. But with general costs from utility bills, wages, taxes and everything attached spiraling out of control, and having been involved in businesses myself in the past, I can see why they are taking these steps. Personally, I'm looking forward to this update. The new engine upgrade is going to bring with it the potential for a lot more optimization, and I can't wait to see what's new. Maps, factions, and everything else as we get through 2023 together. We are 4 weeks into the year, and if this is going to be the biggest wave that rocks the boat, I'm glad it's being dealt with at the very beginning, rather than dragging it out over a long period of time. Once all of this is blown over, I'm sure Squad will continue to grow and develop into the fantastic game that it already is. I feel like I've rambled on for long enough now. This isn't the type of content that I usually make, so it probably isn't as concise as it normally would be. But I feel everything that I have mentioned is relevant and has importance. Please share with me your thoughts after watching this video. Thank you all for watching, take care, and I'll catch you in the next video.